So, TFH 2.0 has been out for a month now. And I did say I was going to wait for another 6 months for my first impressions video before I talked about it again. I've kind of gone back on that, mostly because I think it'd be fun to do this as a sort of monthly evolution of my opinion on the patch and just the state of the game in general. You may recall that in my first impressions video, there were a couple things I said system-wise I did not like, but for the most part I felt good about the balance. And I want to say for the most part, that's still true. This patch has only really grown on me the more time I've spent with it. It's worth noting that there have been a few hot fixes and major bug fixes that have come out since 2.0 first launch back in March. So let's go ahead and start talking about it, starting with the system. So the big one that has changed since I last talked about it in the first impressions video was the cross canner damage, which I mentioned was too high. It made cross canner on offense pretty ridiculous, in the same way you'd use it like a burst in an old BB game to keep the corner. You used cross canner offensively. It did a lot of damage. It was pretty high commit to bait. Apparently, that high damage, which I believe was about 400 or so, was the result of a bug that came with the first hit change that was happening to damage scaling, and so that got fixed. And now cross canner only does about, I think it was about 169 on hit. I should have written it down, but it's much more manageable now. I think cross canner is in a much healthier place. I still would maybe like if they made it easier, or sorry, made it slower to bait. I feel like that could make it better, but we do have to be careful with how that gets changed, because basically I don't want Velvet DPing cross canner reaction. But right now, I still think it's a bit ridiculous that you can do a 2A, hold block, and sometimes you won't recover fast enough to bait cross canner. That's something I would like to see changed in the future. But for the most part, I think it's in a really healthy place. You're seeing it getting used more. I think it's more appealing to people, especially now that it's just had more use at the top level in general. I also mentioned in my first impressions video that I didn't care for the state of throw techs, because they increased the throw tech recovery. And while I've warmed up to it in the sense that I really like being able to punish people even more for pressing throw tech, I still feel that it's maybe a little too much compared to 1.0. I have a bigger problem with how this interacts with rolls, which I had also mentioned, I believe, in my first impressions video, is that rolls have been kind of problematic in the sense that the intended solution seems to be to throw them, but the risk reward on throwing roll is just not good. Most top players aren't even going for throwing rolls because the risk reward's so bad. With the throw tech recovery increase, now you can whiff a throw and they'll 5A you on wake up. And keep in mind, guys, throws only have one active frame, and it's just not really enough. I don't know what the proposed solution would be to this, but it's definitely making the soft knockdown state a little annoying at times, which is okay, you could argue, because there are more ways to play around soft knockdown and to avoid it with proper hard knockdown and juggle decay management. And arguably the first hit changes do play with that, which is the other thing I want to talk about. First hit change was really good. I just like the feel of this patch a lot. We were kind of memeing about it being a 3-touch game early on, but as players have gotten better, and as risk minimization is happening more, which tends to just happen with the increase in level of play, I feel that it's actually in a pretty good place. I would say this is a 3-touch game if you're getting punished hard, or if the character has a lot of resources. One thing you may notice from watching tournament play is that round 3s are way more volatile, but rounds 1 and 2 aren't necessarily, depending on how people play the juggle decay and what kind of risks they take. So I like the feel of this patch. I feel like the match is more dynamic. The game is definitely faster paced. There's not as many just unwinnable timeout situations like there were in 1.0. Even today, I was playing with Amaron. That's a player and a just general matchup that goes to timeout a lot. And I don't know if we got a single timeout. I think maybe there was one the whole set. And the one close timeout I can remember, actually, I got enough damage to kill him and get a life lead because of the first hit changes. So you're not really as safe, and I think that that's overall a good thing. For the most part, every other system change, my opinion, has not changed. The input buffer is probably the best thing to come to this game. It has upped the level of play significantly. The IB change is wonderful. We're finally seeing that mechanic get used more. The pre-block change is absolutely perfect. It looks really silly, but it makes for a much smoother game. Being in the air is still a good position at a lot of times, but it's harder to get in the air in general, and I think that's a good thing. So, onto the individual characters. I'd pretty much said in my first impressions video that every character was good and that there was probably going to be two tiers. And I still feel that way. I think this game has a top half and bottom half, like super strong and very strong. Every character in this game is a threat. When I think of any character in this game, I think, oh gosh, that character's so scary when they XYZ or whatever. I still think that. So let's start with Paprika, who you're watching me play right now. Paprika is definitely way stronger. The system plays in her favor. She has a lot more damage. The first hit bonus really changes her. Belly Flop has given her some new combo routes, more stability on her knockdown game. She's still an unstable character, but she can turn a good starter into a ended round off of just a few hits. She has interesting ways to play with the juggle decay management. The conditioning on command grab is so interesting. Paprika players have really stepped it up, I felt. A lot of them are kind of starting to simmer down on playing really wild. I'm seeing a lot of improvements just to their game flow. We're starting to see her ground neutral get explored more. Like, this character is in a really good place. I'm really happy. I feel like they made Paprika a really scary character when she gets the conditions she wants. But she still has her weaknesses where you can bully her on offense and to an extent in neutral as well. They did a great job with her. I'm really happy with the state of Paprika. Velvet, I feel, is definitely stronger. There's no denying that. The -2 DP change is not a big deal in the slightest. Her throw pressure obviously got hit a lot from that. But she has more damage everywhere else. She has more chip damage. Her neutral is stronger. They buffed a lot of aspects of her. I would argue her defensive options have actually gotten a little bit better because of the 5A change, as well as the system working a little more favorably for her. And yeah, Velvet's really good. She has a bit of an interesting place in the meta because she is sort of a counter pick to some characters. She does very well versus Paprika. She does very well versus Oleander. She does good versus Tien now. 1.0, that was definitely more Tien favored, but this patch she does pretty good against her. And I do think that Velvet's really strong. I think also she may start to fall off just a little as we get more time with this patch. I still think she's good, but because Velvet has more of an actual neutral presence now, people are having to explore new ideas and options that they weren't in 1.0. And I feel that may circumvent some of her power just a bit, but she will always have a strong place in this game with the current patch, just because of her raw numbers. And that's a great place for her to be. Palm. This may come as a surprise, because I had mentioned that I would never learn this character in the slightest, but Palm is actually a really, really strong character. I've been playing her a lot. I've been exploring her like crazy. I think this character is so good. And right now, in this patch, she actually has a bug that makes trades with her level 1 super really high, so she's definitely buffed a bit by that. She's still a little bit unstable just because her mid-range is a lot higher commit than other characters, but she still has strong aspects of neutral. Bitey is so good. She plays the HKD meta really well. She has chances for meter denial. Mama Dog is a really good way to close out rounds and chip situations. Papa Dog is good too. She still hides behind Mama Dog during counters. So Paprika. Palm is a really strong threat this patch, and I think we're going to see a lot more from her. She's actually been getting a lot more play just in general. There are only really a handful of Palm mains in 1.0. On 2.0, there's a lot more, and people are getting a lot better at playing her neutral because there's just so many more players playing her. So I think Palm is going to be a character we should keep an eye on this patch because she's bringing a lot of really strong things to the table, and she just meshes with the system of this patch very, very well. Arizona. Arizona is one of the characters who got a hotfix that I had mentioned earlier. And the balance hotfix that Arizona had was 6B got nerfed as a starter, not in terms of damage, but in terms of juggle decay. This is kind of an important change just because it does make her short combo HKD and her max damage potential a bit lower. 6B is still a kill you button if you get hit by it, which is fine. You just can't do as long combos from it. Even though her damage got nerfed overall, her 6A got changed. It lost some horizontal range and some cross-up range as well. This character is still really good, guys. People love to say that it's because Bubble's playing Velvet or because Java's playing Palm that she's not good. No, Arizona is still good. Arizona players will tell you this character is still really, really good. She's more normalized across the board. She still meshes really well with the system. You're still committing at mid-range because your mid-range buttons are pretty average or below average, but she is still a strong character. I think people are sleeping on her, which is hard to say because she hasn't gotten anything. And I think that's the reason why people don't think she's good, or why people think she's playing her, is because she hasn't gotten a new tool to play with, so she's maybe kind of dry for some characters. Or for some players, excuse me. But she's still really good. If anyone tells you that Arizona is bad this patch, they're just lying to you. Shanty. So we've got more time with Shanty. This character is still mad underdeveloped. This character has some of the most threatening offense in the game, but it's gonna take a while for people to start just blocking her layer 1 of short hop JC and stagger 2B6A, all that. She's still really good. She has some of the most fucked up offensive options in this game, 110%. But it's gonna be a hot minute before we see players get to that level. A lot of players have kind of given up on using magic as a neutral option, which I don't think is in the wrong. I think magic neutral options are pretty gimmicky overall, and they're not really gonna hit prepared players, especially if they've been shown on the stack often. But magic is being used to pump the fuck out of her damage. They've found some really, really consistent and fairly easy magic dump combos, and this character just hits like a truck off of the right starter. She's still a bit of a glass cannon. She has the lowest health in the game. Her defensive options do leave something to be desired. Level 1, level 2 is a pretty good reward as a reversal, and it's a good reversal in itself, but it is the only thing she has. But yeah, Shanty is definitely really strong. I think people are sleeping on her. I know K9, who I think pretty much everyone would agree is probably the best Shanty right now, thinks that she's really strong. And not to mention, I think people personally are just really sleeping on Shanty's neutral. I hear a lot of people say she can't compete mid-range. I wholeheartedly disagree. Shanty has good mid-range. She doesn't have the best mid-range buttons, but she plays the mid-range very well. She has a strong neutral presence with her air-to-airs. 2B is a great whiff punish button. It can anti-air. She has a really fast wave dash and just good movement overall. The only weakness I would say her neutral has is her vertical coverage, which does matter in a couple scenarios. For instance, dealing with Oleander double jump, she doesn't have as good of options against that. Dealing with timeout Tian and like a level 2 scenario, she doesn't have as good options against that. But of the whole, she's a really solid character. I think that when we get more time and just the level of play evolves and we figure out this patch more, I think Shanties are going to be able to almost end the game off of just a blocked short hop JC, because the fuzzy options that she has are ridiculous. The scenario you get put in is you're either taking this unreactable 50-50 or you push block to absolute guard. But if you play TFH, you know how good it is to have someone push block where you expect them to. So Shanty, really strong. We need more time with her to see her develop, but I have a very high opinion of the character, and I think that she is going to make a big splash in the tournament scene very soon. No pun intended. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. Tian. Obviously, I have the most to say about her. Tian is really good. I said in my first impressions video that I thought she was on the weaker end of this patch, just in general. I still kind of think that, but like I said, the power level is so close together, and she's just so solid at what she does, and she's so consistent and safe. I don't think it really matters. She's like trading some explosive power. She actually has more explosive power this patch. She's trading some of that for more stability compared to other characters, and I think that's perfectly fine. I think Tian is still really strong. She actually has been getting a lot of good level 2 damage cash outs now, so she does have that explosive potential in the right resource state and from the right starter as well. And the magic management is very interesting with her now. There's a lot more reasons to just go into level 2s. There's more reasons to get magic in general. You can start slipping V-Dash into your combos to get a tiny damage bump, but you can still keep the magic available for the next mix-up. V-Dash has just found its place in the meta. I had said in my first impressions video that I felt Volcanic Dash was a neutral conversion tool and sometimes a combo extender. And I still think that. I still think that V-Dash is not really meant to be a mix-up tool. There's so much counterplay to it, guys. A lot of the Latin American and Asian TNs have been really into using Super Jump V-Dash. That's not a neutral option I expect to hit people for much longer. But I will say that I think that V-Dash has good utility as a way to switch sides and as a potential closeout mix-up if it hasn't been on the stack. I really like it. I think it actually covers a blind spot in her neutral where you can no longer just push block 5B at max range against Tian and get her out. She now has a way to reset pressure if she reads you're going to push block it. I think it's cool. Tian is really good. I don't know what else to say. Tian is just a solid character. You cannot make this character bad. She's in a really good place right now, and I think she does well against every character. I don't think she has a bad matchup in this game. So, that's all the characters. Oh, sorry, I didn't even bring up Oleander. Right, that was the one I was going to talk about the most. Jeez. So Oleander also got a hot fix. It was more of a bug fix. Fred, when 2.0 came out, was supposed to reduce juggle decay on a first hit. It didn't work properly. Now it works properly. And it is a absolute game changer. Fred is actually more powerful in 2.0 than he was in 1.0 because of this change alone. I would have probably said before this change went through that Oleander might have been a contender for weakest character in the patch. Relative, so obviously that's not a huge thing. But I do not think that that's the case anymore. Oleander is really strong. I think she's a little more stable. Fred is more ridiculous, but you also have to work harder to get him out. The system kind of works against Oleander, and she does have some pretty raw counter picks in terms of matchups. And I think that makes her a little more niche in the meta. But Oleander's still good. Amaron is still winning tournaments. Fred is still ridiculous. Her neutral tools and her solo offense got so much better. And even though her damage got hit, she's getting more off of big starters. So if you overextend against a character whose kit is designed to bait you into overextend, you will die. She will get Fred, and she will destroy you. So that said, Oleander, definitely strong. Definitely as a character, stronger overall now than she was in 1.0. Maybe still on the bottom half of characters. I don't really have anything concrete about that just yet. Because she is still more unstable in general. More stable than she was in 1.0 for sure. But she's definitely good. So that wraps up for the characters. If you can't tell, every character in 2.0 is really good, as I've already said. This patch is bringing so much creativity and expression to the table, and if you ask me, that above everything else is the thing that makes a fighting game good. Before any other thing. There are two things I would like to see tweaked. One is how throw versus roll works, which I had mentioned earlier. I don't know what the best solution is to that is, whether it's giving throws a backwards hitbox, making the collision on rolls a lot bigger so they're easier to throw. I just want, when I see a throw and when I read a roll, I want to be able to throw the roll like 110% of the time. Right now, it feels hard to do that it's not even worth the risk reward, especially if you play a character who doesn't have a combo throw. It's just not worth it. I would love to see that tweaked. Another thing I would maybe like to see tweaked is actually backdash. Backdash is so interesting to me because this is one of the only games out there where you can cancel backdash into buttons, but also have backdash still be invulnerable. And it just makes me feel strange because it's something I'm not used to. And while it's definitely grown on me, I can't help but feel like maybe it's a little overtuned at the moment. I wouldn't want to change that aspect of backdash. I think the game is very well designed around this backdash cancel idea. But I would maybe like to see a bit of a juggle decay penalty when you do backdash. It wouldn't even have to be a lot. But like, let's say someone does, short, they do like a slow get up, so their JD doesn't get emptied, and they try to go for backdash 5A. Something along those lines, right? Maybe then it lowers their JD so that if I punish the backdash recovery, then I get to do more damage to them. You can already kind of kill backdash button with this because counter hits just instantly remove JD. But I think that this is probably something that should be looked at in the long run. I'm still iffy on cross canner as well. I would just really like to be able to do 2A, hold back, and know that I'm going to bait a first hit cross canner. That's all I really want to be changed about that mechanic. And these are incredibly minor things. This patch is so good, it's so fun, it's expressive, it's creative, every character is good. There's just such good character representation in every tournament. New stuff is being found all the time. There's lots of new little quirks to the engine and to characters and to routing, and it's been a blast. 2.0 is the best fighting game I've ever played. That opinion has not changed, and that is my month 1 impression of TFH 2.0.